Rome in the 1st century AD was the largest city the world had ever seen. At its peak, over 1 million people lived within its walls, a number that would not be matched by any European city for over 1,000 years. This was the capital of an empire that stretched from Britain to Egypt, from Spain to Syria. Every road led here. Every ambition pointed toward these 7 hills. In this video, I use modern AI tools to bring ancient paintings, mosaics, and archaeological evidence to life, allowing us to shift perspective, change camera angles, and move through the same scenes in ways no ancient artist ever could. To understand Rome, we must approach it as ancient travellers did, along the Via Appia, the Queen of Roads. Built 3 centuries before the time of Christ, this stone highway ran south toward Naples and beyond. But as you travelled north toward the city, the tombs began to appear. Roman law forbade burial within the city walls, so the wealthy lined the roads with elaborate monuments to their dead. Walking the final miles into Rome meant walking through a corridor of the departed, marble faces watching from every side, reminding the living that glory fades but stone endures. Rising above the city's rooftops was the Flavian Amphitheatre, known to us as the Colosseum. Completed in 80 AD, it was the largest amphitheatre ever built, capable of holding 50,000 spectators hungry for blood and spectacle. The building itself was an engineering marvel. 80 entrances allowed the crowd to fill or empty the seats in minutes. A massive canvas awning called the Velarium could be stretched overhead to shade spectators from the Mediterranean sun, operated by 1,000 sailors from the Imperial fleet. Beneath the wooden arena floor lay a labyrinth of tunnels, cages and elevators that could raise wild animals and gladiators directly into the combat zone. The games were Rome's obsession. Gladiators fought in matched pairs, their styles and weapons as distinct as athletes in modern sports. The crowd had favourites, bet fortunes, and screamed for blood. Wild beasts from Africa were slaughtered by the hundreds. Condemned criminals were executed in elaborate stage scenarios. The sand was dyed red to hide the blood, and perfume water was sprayed to mask the smell of death. It was brutal, it was spectacular, and it was free, paid for by emperors who understood that bread and circuses kept the masses content. Descend from the Colosseum, and you enter the Forum Romanum, the political heart of the ancient world. For centuries, this rectangular plaza had been where Rome's fate was decided. Senators debated in the Curia. Lawyers argued cases in the basilicas. Priests tended the sacred flame of Vesta. Triumphal processions passed through on their way to the Temple of Jupiter on the Palatine Hill. By the 1st century, the Forum was crowded with monuments celebrating Rome's victories and heroes. The Temple of Saturn held the state treasury. The Rostra, a speaking platform decorated with the prows of captured ships, was where politicians addressed the people. It was here that Mark Antony delivered his famous funeral oration for Julius Caesar, turning the crowd against the assassins with his words. Caesar himself had been murdered just a short walk away at the Theatre of Pompey, stabbed 23 times by senators who feared his ambition. His body was burned in the Forum, and a temple rose on the spot where the pyre had stood. The Forum was not just a marketplace of goods, but a marketplace of power, where careers were made, destroyed, and sometimes ended with a knife. If the Colosseum held 50,000, the Circus Maximus held 250,000. This massive chariot racing stadium stretched for over 600 metres between the Palatine and Aventine Hills, making it the largest entertainment venue in human history. The races were Rome's true passion. 4 teams competed, identified by their colours: the blues, greens, reds and whites. Fans were fanatical, wearing their team's colours, cursing rivals and betting everything they owned on the outcome. The charioteers were slaves or freedmen, but successful ones became celebrities, their names scratched as graffiti across the city, their faces painted on tavern walls. A typical race day featured 24 races, each consisting of 7 laps around the central spine. The turns at each end were deadly. chariots crashing, horses falling, drivers dragged to their deaths. The crowd roared at every wreck, every near miss, every dramatic finish. Magic curse tablets were buried in the track, asking the gods to cripple rival horses. The circus was Rome at its most passionate, most superstitious, and most alive. Above the Forum rose the Palatine Hill, where Rome's story had begun and where its emperors now lived. The word palace itself derives from this hill, and by the 1st century it had become a complex of imperial residences that dazzled visitors from across the known world. Augustus, the first emperor, had lived here in deliberate modesty, his house decorated but not ostentatious. His successors showed no such restraint. Tiberius built a massive new palace. Caligula extended it toward the Forum. Nero connected it to his infamous Golden House. Domitian constructed the Domus Flavia, with its vast throne room and elaborate gardens, the definitive imperial residence. From the terrace of the Palatine, you could look down on the Circus Maximus on one side and the Forum on the other. The emperor literally looked down upon the Roman people, godlike in his elevation. The palace employed thousands of slaves and freedmen, from secretaries who ran the empire to food tasters who protected against poison. Intrigue filled its corridors. Emperors were made and murdered within these walls, their fates decided by ambition, conspiracy, and the loyalty of the Praetorian Guard. Descend from the Palatine and walk north, and the marble gives way to brick, the grandeur to squalor. This was the Subura, Rome's most notorious neighbourhood, a maze of narrow streets, towering apartment blocks, and every vice the ancient world could offer. The poor of Rome lived in insulae, apartment buildings that rose 5, 6, even 7 stories high. The ground floors housed shops and taverns. The upper floors were divided into tiny rooms where families crowded together without running water, without toilets, without kitchens. Fires were constant, collapses common. The poet Juvenal complained that in the Subura, a man risked death from falling roof tiles, chamber pots emptied from windows, and muggers in the dark. But the Subura was also alive in ways the wealthy hills were not. Taverns served cheap wine and hot food to workers who had no kitchens. Prostitutes advertised their services with explicit signs. Fortune tellers, snake charmers, and street performers competed for coins. At night, the streets belonged to gangs and drunks, and wise men stayed home or travelled with bodyguards and torches. This was Rome unfiltered. The city of the million who were not senators or emperors, but simply survived. Rome owed its existence to the Tiber River, and by the 1st century the river was working harder than ever. The city consumed more than it could possibly produce. Grain from Egypt, olive oil from Spain, wine from Gaul, exotic animals from Africa, slaves from everywhere. All of it came by ship to Ostia at the river's mouth, then up the Tiber on barges to the wharves of Rome. The harbour district was a chaos of commerce. Warehouses stretched along the river, filled with amphorae of wine and oil, sacks of grain and goods from every corner of the empire. The grain supply was a matter of state security. Emperors who let the people go hungry did not remain emperors for long. A massive bureaucracy managed the annona, the free grain distribution that fed hundreds of thousands of Roman citizens. The smell of the Tiber was legendary and not pleasant. The river served as Rome's sewer, carrying away the waste of 1 million people. The great Cloaca Maxima, one of the world's earliest sewage systems, emptied directly into its waters. Yet the river remained essential, the artery that kept the heart of the empire beating, bringing life even as it carried away refuse. To truly understand Roman life, you must understand the baths. By the 1st century, Rome had hundreds of public bathhouses, from small neighbourhood facilities to massive imperial complexes that could accommodate thousands. Bathing was not just hygiene, it was social life, exercise, business and pleasure combined. A typical Roman might spend hours at the baths each afternoon. The ritual began in the Palaestra. an exercise yard for wrestling, ball games, or lifting weights. Then came the sequence of rooms, the tepidarium with its warm air, the caldarium with its hot pools, the frigidarium with its cold plunge. Slaves attended bathers, offering massages, applying oils, scraping skin clean with curved metal tools called strigils. The baths were democratic in their way. Senators soaked alongside freedmen. Gossip was exchanged, deals were made, friendships formed. Libraries and lecture halls attached to the great Imperial baths offered culture alongside cleanliness. For the poor of the Subura, the baths offered warmth, water, and dignity that their cramped apartments could never provide. Standing here, looking back at these scenes, it is remarkable how familiar ancient Rome can feel. The traffic jams, the apartment living, the obsession with sports and spectacle, the gap between rich and poor. Rome was the first city to face the challenges of urban life at massive scale, and its solutions shaped our world in ways we still discover. And through these reconstructions, we get just a glimpse of what it was like to walk these streets when Rome was the centre of everything. If there's another city or another moment in time you'd like to see brought back to life, let me know in the comments. I'd love to keep building this journey into the past with you. Thank you for watching.